sort of a little touching back to some of the information that's already been touched on by you, sort of why this is important.
The medical personnel call it scromiting. Those people come repeatedly to the emergency department. It's different for everybody how they end up. When these patients come in and they have like repeated vomiting or acute psychosis, they tell us it's super hard to stop, which says to me it's addictive. The thought that marijuana psychosis is rare is a huge misconception. It's not a small number, it's huge. And we're going to see even more as more kids use.
All of these things add up. And
vaping cannabis may be legal when you're 18 or older, but are there risks? Even though vaping exposes you to fewer chemicals than smoking, it can still be bad for your health. Smoking burns cannabis to create smoke. Vaping heats a cannabis product to create vapor. This heating process can create new chemicals that can be harmful when inhaled. They can even hurt your lungs. Some vaping products have high levels of THC, which can increase the risk of greening out. This happens when you take more cannabis than your body can handle. Greening out can cause you to feel nauseous, confused, and anxious. High levels of THC can also lead to your body becoming dependent on cannabis. Using cannabis every day, or almost every day, has been linked to changes in the brain and problems with attention and memory. This may also lead to mental health issues, like anxiety and depression, and can even make them worse. We don't yet know all the long-term effects of vaping cannabis, but we do know that it comes with health risks for your physical and mental health. Vaping cannabis comes with risks. Get the facts, know the risk.
Two Indiana high school students are under arrest and another nearly died.
This comes after the student overdosed after using a vape that was laced with fentanyl. School officials say the student was using a THC vape but did not know it had traces of fentanyl. Thankfully, the student will survive. 2 doses of Narcan were administered at the school before EMS arrived. The 2 students who were arrested are 14 and 15. They were arrested for misusing and experimenting with substances. In a statement to families, the school superintendent said, quote, "It is urgent that you have an open conversation with your child or children about the risks of ingesting hidden substances that can be dangerous and potentially deadly. Please emphasize the importance of caution as vapes can contain harmful drugs without the user's knowledge."
My 18-year-old son used to be social, funny, outgoing, and a fabulous athlete until a friend at school gave him a THC vape. At first, I had no idea, but he quit sports, became socially withdrawn, and started to struggle with school. I discovered his vape use and naturally attempted to get him to stop. He began to get in trouble with the law and exhibit strange behaviors. When this happened, it was devastating. But I attributed these behaviors to being high. I created consequences, set boundaries, practiced tough love, and prayed that my son would outgrow this phase and eventually give up marijuana. I wish I knew then that the THC was actually damaging his brain. But the addiction for profit industry does a pretty good job of convincing the public that marijuana is a playful, innocuous drug. Let me tell you, it's not.
Marijuana and the normalization of that, because that is another thing, especially with teenagers, like it's no big deal.
Yeah. And think about this. On this one, I don't totally blame the teens. I actually blame the adults, because when we legalize a drug, guess what? The 17-year-old can't vote. The 16-year-old can't vote. So we're sitting back going, hang on, let's legalize it, make it more available, have dispensaries where we just have Daryl and Daryl who are running it, selling to anybody that don't even have good checking ID standards or anything. They're selling a drug that the forms of cannabis we see today, we don't completely know everything about. But then we're going to look at the teens and go, y'all are a problem. It doesn't work like that. I'm surprised the teens don't look at us and go, I didn't vote this in, you did. Mm-hmm. So understanding, half the states in the country where we've legalized weed, but then we turn around and tell teens don't use it. Their first question to us as adults should be, well, why do you legalize it then? If we're not supposed to use it, why did you guys make it available? Well, we did it for medicinal value. Well, Dad, heroin has medicinal value too. Are you going to legalize that? I mean, there's so many arguments they could throw right now.
The vapes have video games in them now? New product on the market is like Tamagotchi meets the vape. Here's how it works. You vape, the game's happy, the character's pleased. You stop, it dies. What kind of...
This right here is a vape that also has a built-in gaming system inside. This game has 2 modes, a vape mode and a game mode. On the vape mode, it contains a regular and a beast mode. It also has a child lock, just in case your kid gets a hand of it. But this vape could run F-22, Pac-Man, and even Tetris. But honestly, if that's not advertising to children, then I don't know what is.
Cannabis-induced psychosis has devastated our lives. My son's brain health has been severely damaged, and our family has been traumatized. I now live on edge, not knowing if my son will ever be mentally stable again. I have not found any treatment programs that specialize or focus on CIP. that are affordable or that our insurance will pay for. I've gone into debt, sending him to out-of-state programs in hopes that his brain will have a chance to heal. My son still has not grasped the fact that THC products are the cause of his brain creating his false reality. Today, doctors diagnose him as schizophrenic, but typical antipsychotics don't take away the damage caused by the THC products. My son is 24 years old and living in his own private hell, all because he started smoking weed. I wish legislators would understand the danger of all THC products, natural and synthetic, on developing brains. Cannabis-induced psychosis is real. It happened to my child. Educate your child on the harms of THC at johnny'sambassadors.org.
Parents are all the same when it comes to vaping.
Bye, Mom. Bye, honey.
None of them think their kid is doing it.
Not my kid.
Maybe some of their kids' friends. Maybe some on the soccer team. Definitely that kid with the purple hair. Maybe even some of the cheerleaders. But their kid? Never. If that's what you think, all right.
If the developing brain is exposed to a lot of THC, the part responsible for controlling emotions may never reach its full potential. This can have long-term consequences and effects on one's measurable intelligence, learning, and judgment. One study that followed 13-year-olds for 25 years has found that those who regularly consume marijuana lose on average 5.8 IQ points by the time they reach adulthood. Since our average IQ is just 100, that is enough to shut the door to a good college or close the opportunity to work at a great company. But that's not all. There is also evidence that some teenagers that use cannabis are at higher risk of developing depression or even a psychosis. A psychosis changes the way the brain processes information and causes you to lose touch with reality. You can see and hear things that aren't real and may completely lose your mind.
Before I arrived at the hospital, Sarah sent me a text saying, "Mummy, I don't want to die without you."
Can I ask you when you first vaped? What age were you?
9.
You were 9 years old. And why did you first vape?
I was friends with me and my sister went out with a girl who lived at the bottom of my street, and she was 13 and she was using one of them, and she had told me to do it, and then I done it, and then I completely forgot about it again, and then when I went into first year is when I started doing it again, but a lot more.
Like as though you were vaping all the time? Like would you vape at lunchtime, vape after school, before school?
I would share vapes with friends, like because we'd put our money together and then keep them, and then she'd hide them in her house and then bring them into school. But then first year I started getting my own. I had my own ones bringing in.
Opioids, particularly fentanyl, are potent and dangerous. They carry a serious risk of addiction, misuse, overdose, and even death. Opioid overdose can be reversed if the opioid reversal drug naloxone is administered in time.
Narcan nasal spray is an emergency treatment designed to rapidly reverse the effects of a life-threatening opioid emergency. If you suspect an opioid overdose, check to see if the person will not wake up, is very sleepy, or is not breathing well. Do not test the nasal spray device before use. Narcan nasal spray is for use in the nose only and is safe to use even if opioids are not present. Hold the nasal spray device with your thumb on the bottom of the plunger. Insert the nozzle into either nostril and press the plunger firmly to give the dose. One nasal spray device contains 1 dose of medicine. Call 911 immediately after giving Narcan nasal spray. If the person does not wake up, continue to give doses every 2 to 3 minutes until the person wakes up. It is safe to keep giving doses. Stay until an ambulance arrives, even if the person wakes up. You have the power to save a life. For more information, visit Narcan.com.
The developing brain of teenagers is the most vulnerable to these effects. The powerful addictive nature of nicotine is so high that it's comparable to heroin and cocaine. Besides nicotine, e-cigarettes contain chemical solvents. When heated very high by some of the new e-cigarette devices, these solvents can be transformed into formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen. It causes cancer. These observations are concerning, but we really do not know what the long-term effects from inhaling these chemicals in your lungs will be. E-cigs contain many other chemicals to generate enticing flavors. In fact, there are almost 8,000 different flavors available today, so we don't know very much about many of them. We do know that some of the butter flavorings contain diacetyl, which is famous for causing popcorn lung. lung. Popcorn lung is a disease called bronchiolitis obliterans, which is basically an irreversible scarring and destruction of the delicate lung tissue that can kill you. Strawberry and other healthy-sounding fruit flavors have been found to be cytotoxic and potentially cancer-causing as well. Vaping devices, or specifically the lithium batteries inside them, may explode unpredictably. Although uncommon, this happens frequently enough that e-cigarettes have been banned from luggage on airplanes. Unpredictable explosions have occurred in people's faces and mouths and resulted in serious injuries, including blindness. With these potential risks of e-cigarettes, the addictive nicotine, the exploding batteries, the carcinogenic liquids, why would any company want you to use them?
This is vaping. Actually, it's a form of getting nicotine into your body without smoking cigarettes and having the tar and the damaging substances from cigarettes get into your lung. However, the nicotine in these vaping products is strong and actually injures and damages the cells in the mouth. It can contribute to mouth cancer, it can contribute to gum recession, it can contribute to gum disease, because what happens is nicotine actually causes a constriction of the blood vessels. Now, if you're getting a reduced blood supply to the tissues in your mouth, your gum tissue for instance, that tissue is going to be more susceptible to recession, more susceptible to disease, generally unhealthier. Remember, if your mouth is healthy, your body will be healthier, and this does not contribute to a healthy mouth.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 710 joint event where we're going to explore
a topic that continues to grow in relevance across Florida, across our local communities, the rise in marijuana use, especially high potency concentrates. Good evening. My name is Stephanie Valderrama. I am an anchor and reporter with CBS 12 News. And this evening, I am honored to be with you as we really shine a light on the real life impacts of marijuana and what it could do to our youth, family, and the broader community. So first and foremost, I would like to thank Palm Beach State College for hosting this event this evening. This event is also proudly presented by the Southeast Florida Community Coalition, a united effort between United Way of Broward County and South Florida Opioid Alliance in Broward County, Thrive in Indian River County, Martin County Community Action Coalition, and the Palm Beach County Behavioral Health Coalition. Now, together, our mission is to educate, inform, and empower. We're here to share meaningful insight and practical resources that can help and protect the health and well-being of our communities, really today and in the future. So not only are we streaming online, but there's also obviously our in-person gathering here. And also we're learning an in-person watch party is happening right now in Indian River County, organized by Thrive. Thank you, Michelle, for your invaluable support. And last but not least, thank you to the Children's Services Council for their partnership. So if you've never heard of 710, well, you're not alone. I'm also someone who just recently learned about this. Known as Dab Day, it's like the new 420, but focused on high potency marijuana concentrate. So this is really interesting, actually. If you flip the number 710 upside down, it spells oil, referring to marijuana oils, wax, and dabs. Now, tonight, we're going to hear from experts who are breaking down the data and sharing the real-life impact behind these trends. Before we get started, though, I do want to share some housekeeping notes with you. I want everyone to be very respectful of our speakers and fellow attendees at this event. Now, if you have any questions, this is really important. Please feel free to jot them down. I believe on everyone's desk is this paper right here. So if you have a question throughout this seminar, please feel free to jot it down here. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A so you can ask your questions to our speakers. So our speakers tonight will begin with Julie Dryfault, followed by Ellen Snelling, followed by Dr. Wendy Stefan, and finally ending our presentations with Captain Juan Velez. So first up, Julie Dryfault. She is a subject matter expert, a sought-after speaker, and national director of outreach for One Chance to Grow Up. She speaks nationally to policymakers and regulators, community leaders, partners, trusted adults, youth-serving coalition partners, and school organizations about today's THC, marijuana, and hemp, and devastating impacts on our kids, and how communities can generate actionable narratives to create change. Since 2018, Julie has passionately and tirelessly advocated for kids and equipped trusted adults to talk about today's marijuana. Julie has a BA in History and English from Mount Vernon Nazarene University. Julie, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. I am Julie Dryfault. I'm the National Director of Community Outreach for One Chance to Grow Up. I really appreciate all of you here tonight, both in the room and online. It's important that our kids have adults that understand this subject and the effects it has on their developing brain, so I really appreciate you being a champion for our kids. A quick 1-minute origin story of One Chance to Grow Up. Colorado, I'm from Colorado, is the first state to legalize in 2012, voted by the voters, and we were the first state to have a commercialized market. So our co-founders were invited to be part of a stakeholder group and a task force to figure out this new industry. And it became abundantly clear, literally, that the ease of the consumer was voted #1 priority, and the safety of our kids in the community was ranked dead last. So at that moment, we decided that we had to engage to protect our kids, not just in Colorado, but across the country. And we've been at this since 2012. Today, we're all out of school, but linguistics, science, and marketing. I just quickly want to tell you what we're talking about tonight. The cannabis, marijuana, weed, pod, it comes from the plant Cannabis sativa. Really what we're talking about tonight is the tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC, which is the component primarily responsible for the effects of marijuana on a person's mental state. CBD is cannabidiol, and it used to be the non-psychoactive component that we said was not high-inducing, but that has changed immensely with the hemp industry that's happening now. Please note there's over 100 cannabinoids and 500 chemicals in the cannabis plant, and a lot of those have little or no research on them. THC comes in all forms. It is no longer natural. It is not good for kids. It is not organic. You can get eye drops, nasal sprays. You can smoke it. You can dab it. You can eat it. You can drink it. There's inhalers. There's topical body products that include lotions and nail polish. There's sexual lubricants and suppositories for pretty much any part of your body. These are 3 vape pens that I purchased. We shop the marketplace, and I'll explain why later, but these are discreet, child-friendly, and very potent and very cheap. The black vape pen is a biscotti flavored vape pen. It averaged to be about 6 cents per high. It has 1,400 puffs in it, and as you can see, it's about the size of 2 quarters combined. The baked HHC is a hemp-derived THC pen. It's called cereal milk, which is a kid-friendly flavor, in my opinion, with the baked euphemism. And I don't even think I have to tell you about the vape pens on the far right. They look like crayons, and those 2 have an average potency of 75% THC in berry and lemonade flavors. These are 2 products I bought in California. Puppy chow, which my kids used to make in elementary school and preschool. Ice cream. There's the inhaler that we talked about. My son has asthma, and that is interchangeable with an albuterol inhaler. So in most high schools across the country, high school students are able to self-carry inhalers. So they could interchange that with a THC inhaler and be hidden in plain sight. The Joy Bombs are on the right. My friend here, Ellen, has something very similar in the back that really look like Skittles, smell like Skittles. We have a video on our YouTube channel that shows them side by side, but called Trick or Treat, which we've shared with educators and legislators. So early on, a lot of people did not know what this legal marijuana looked like. This is what it looks like. It's no longer weed in a baggie. There's chocolate chip cookie dough, there's rainbow belts. I purchased these products in Washington. My poor kids, every time we go on vacation, I go to a new dispensary and take pictures. But this is a great resource for parents, educators. If somebody's trying to talk to a legislator, they're free resources. It's thcphotos.org, and there's 9 states right now represented that have legal cannabis. So again, I applaud you all being here. This is why it matters, because people need to know what these products are and why it matters to the adolescent brain. Excuse me. Commercialization, you can't see the bottom of the slide here, it got cut off, but this started in 1960, so it was even, it was like 2%, maybe 3%. Marijuana became legal medically in Colorado in 2000, a little bit of an uptick, and then all of a sudden we have dispensaries open in January 1st of 2012, and there was an 800% increase in potency. So you have a new industry, you have incredible innovation, and then you have this commercialization. So marijuana is addictive. 17% of users do become addicted, and of the daily users, that jumps up to 25 to close to 50%. There is a medical code called cannabis use disorder, and the most severe form of that would be addiction. And just so you know, marijuana accounts for 55% of kids that are in substance use centers at this point in our country. Has anyone ever heard this? I'd love a raise of hands. Cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. Okay, that's more than I usually say. So it is unrelented, violent, reoccurrent vomiting. And it's relieved by showers, hot showers, but I've seen multiple people go into ERs with second-degree burns because it's how much they need that relief. They can be very expensive evaluations, up to $77,000 per person. It doesn't respond to anti-nausea meds, and the only cure is stopping marijuana use. And it's 4 to 6 months for symptom relief. And there's been multiple deaths associated with this due to renal failure and cardiac arrest. Psychosis. I pulled this list from our Colorado State Health Department. This is common side effects. So I can't believe that munchies and red eyes are in the same list as psychosis and paranoia. So that just goes to show you that there are significant side effects, even in our own state health departments are recognizing this as well. So what is psychosis? It's having one episode of losing touch with reality. I have my notes here, what it all is, but it's losing touch with reality. It's paranoia. It's feeling that something's coming after you. It's having auditory or visual hallucinations. So study found that even one psychotic episode, one, can increase your chance of developing schizophrenia by 47%. And that risk is much higher for young men. We don't know why, but it's affecting our young men at a much higher rate. And schizophrenia is just a more permanent sign of the psychosis. More marijuana has a higher suicide risk, as you can see, 2 to 4 times more likely to experience suicidal thoughts. These are the deaths in Colorado. Marijuana is the #1 substance found in almost over 21% of our suicides, twice the amount of alcohol. Our kids are being marketed to left and right. There's a smell-proof backpack. There's snowmen. There's cats. There's that girl on the far right. She's not 21. There's Vans, a very popular skater store that kids like to shop at. The Incredibles is a Disney movie. Etsy, I found that on Etsy, the little cannabis smoking plant. And I know Ellen's going to talk a little bit about hemp, but THC is THC is THC. It's having the same effect on our brains. These are products, these are hemp-derived products that were found in California. This is my 17-year-old daughter at the time. I bought some online. She said, "Hey, Mom, you have an Amazon package." That package was filled with hundreds of milligrams of THC that no parent would know. And she was 17 at the time. So this is our problem. We've got all these kids that are underage. I do want to mention that we were promised a bill of goods in a lot of legal states that cannabis will help the opiate crisis, and it did not. There's a strong association with opiate use at 19. But I do want to this is really important. Parents and adults and grandparents and teachers and coaches, you are so important. If you tell your kids that you disapprove of marijuana use for their adolescent brain, they are 72% less likely to use. Those are huge data points. So I definitely want to leave you with all this doom and gloom, but you have the power. Any adult in any kid's life really can be that person. Thank you.
Julie, thank you so much for that insightful presentation. As a reminder, because I took notes for myself, if you have any questions for Julie, please jot them down now, so you can make sure you ask them at the end. Our next presentation is by Ellen Snelling. Now, Ellen Snelling joined the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance back in 2000 and currently serves as the board chair. ACADA's mission is to prevent youth and adult substance abuse and promote healthy communities. Now, Ellen chairs the Tampa Alcohol Coalition, a subcommittee of the HCADA created in 2001 in response to the high rate of underage drinking and DUI crashes in Hillsborough County. She participates on the HCADA's Marijuana Task Force and Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force and is a volunteer for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Hillsborough County. She serves on the Florida Coalition Alliance and Florida Impaired Driving Coalition. Ms. Snelling received her MS degree in dietetics from Florida International University. Ellen, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much. I am going to talk to you today about the marijuana landscape in Florida. You've heard from Julie some of the landscape in Colorado, which was one of the first states, or the first state that legalized recreational. So we have medical marijuana here in Florida. So what is the current marijuana policy in Florida? We have two things: decriminalization, which is many of our cities and counties have decriminalized, which means that small amounts of marijuana under 20 grams, you will get a civil citation for possession as opposed to an arrest. Then the second policy is medical marijuana, which was legalized in 2016 by an amendment. We're going to talk a little more about that. But when you look at the whole United States, the vast majority of states have some form of medical marijuana. So that's all of the darker blue colors. The very dark blue is medical marijuana only. The medium blue is recreational and medical marijuana. So you can see pretty much every state except 3 have medical. But the interesting thing on this is if you look in the southeast part of the United States, no one has recreational. So that's why we are a target. Medical marijuana, again, passed in 2016 with Amendment 2. The next year, the legislators put a legislation together to implement it. The department that's over medical marijuana in Florida is called the Office of Medical Marijuana Use, and it's the Department of Health. I'll talk to you a little bit more about how you can get more statistics if you're interested on the medical marijuana industry in Florida. So smoked marijuana was not initially allowed as medicine. That didn't start till 2019. And interestingly, the number of patients almost doubled in the last several years because the favorite form of medical marijuana is smoked. Cities and counties can ban medical marijuana dispensaries, so that's important to know. Medical marijuana grows, production facilities, and dispensaries, according to state law, have to be at least 500 feet away from schools. Persons over the age either 18 or older can get a medical marijuana card by going to a doctor and having a diagnosis. There's like 10 specific diagnoses like ALS, MS, cancer, but it also says, or other similar conditions. So it seems like it's pretty easy to get a medical marijuana card in Florida. The edibles are one of the success stories in our medical marijuana industry because they're restricted to 10 milligrams per serving, 200 milligrams per package. It's in plain packaging, and they're not allowed to have animal shapes. They're not allowed to be marketed to children. So there's some pretty good regulations on our edibles. Smoking medical marijuana in public is illegal. I mean, I know it's hard to believe because you can smell it everywhere. Driving under the influence of medical marijuana is definitely illegal. I've had DUI officers tell me that when they pull someone over for DUI and smoke billows out of the car, they show them their medical marijuana card. Like they think that's a get out of jail free card. There's advertising restrictions in the state of Florida. They cannot have billboards and no marketing to children for medical marijuana. And the product labels have to include the concentration of THC and CBD. So what does this look like? These are some ads. Many of them are from Trulieve. And so delicioso, right? Medicine. And you could get pre-made rolled joints. In this particular brand, they're advertising a flamingo that has flower as its body, 1 gram pre-rolls. And then did you know that there's happy hour for medical marijuana? So on your Monday just got better, you can get medical marijuana at Trulieve and you get a discount for happy hour. In the upper right-hand corner, I just find it fascinating that there's medical marijuana in a syringe. Now that doesn't mean it's injected, but it's concentrated. It's so concentrated they wanted to put it in a syringe so you can measure it more carefully. And then we have Cart Week. This is just recently during June. So you were able to get the cartridges of concentrate and get, again, a discount. So I just find it interesting that medications can be BOGO. This one kind of really gets me because usually Sunday morning, I actually go to church, right? But on Sunday morning, you can wake and bake. And Trulieve invites you to come out. And if you're one of their first customers on Sunday morning, you can get a free joint, medical joint, of course. And if you get really thirsty out in the hot sun, you can get an orange tonic. But be careful, it has 50 milligrams of THC in it. And then with 710 coming up, this is an advertisement actually from last year, but they had all of their concentrates. And these are things like, you don't think of medicine in the form of what they call butter, shatter, crack. You know, I mean, it's a concentrate. It's super concentrated, 88, 90% THC. But we do have medical marijuana products that are like that. And that's why the 710 holiday came about, to celebrate these concentrates. So even though it's medical, we have these same products here, the same that they would have out in Colorado. And then this one, you know, they're not supposed to advertise towards children, but this is called Banana Crush. And it has a smiley face made out, you know, banana, a couple of banana slices. So I think that's questionable. And just so you know, if you find advertising you think is geared toward children or any products that are medical marijuana, you can contact the Department of Health and put in a complaint. And I've done that before. So the edibles, even though the products, which you see the kind of whitish, sugary cubes, those are not that enticing to children. Of course, they're sugar, but just think about gummy bears, gummy worms, bright colors. So at least they're not that. But the ads, like, get something sweet as a kiss. I mean, this is supposed to be medicine. I just think we have a ways to go, and this is not what you would expect to see, like Xanax. You wouldn't expect it to be advertised like this. So to get your statistics, if you're interested, you can go to knowthefacts.mmj.com, and you can find each week they update everything. So we have almost 1 million medical marijuana patients in Florida. There are over 2,000 qualified physicians, and we have 721 dispensaries in the state. This is my really good news, and we all know by now, Amendment 3 did not pass, so we do not have recreational marijuana in Florida. One of the campaigns that I was involved in was a grassroots campaign, and it wasn't lobbying, it was advocacy. Don't let Florida go to pot. We cannot let our guard down, because guess what? 2026, there may be another recreational marijuana amendment. They're already collecting signatures. So the message is, even though it did not pass, 56% of our voters voted for Amendment 3 to legalize recreational marijuana. Luckily, our cutoff is 60%, but there's so much education that needs to be done. Research-based prevention and talking about what happens in recreational states. So that's what we're going to do, is look at what happens in some recreational states. THC-involved driving fatalities are skyrocketing. So Oregon, Washington, Colorado, they all had an increase in marijuana-related DUI fatalities. 1 out of 4 road deaths in Colorado involved marijuana. This slide comes from Smart Approaches to Marijuana. It's a great resource. I suggest that you go to that and look at all of their great educational materials. This is another SAM slide, but it's more of a bar graph, but it shows you again, you look at that dotted line, that's when commercial recreational marijuana sales occurred, and then you can see it going up. It surged up after that. So don't let anyone tell you that if you legalize recreational, it will not affect traffic deaths, because it will. In Florida, after medical marijuana passed in 2016, there was some money set aside for the Highway Patrol and the Florida Department of Transportation to do some ads. It's called, I like this, Drive Baked, Get Busted. And the website is still up. It talks about the signs that you would look for to see if marijuana is impairing driving and all the things that it does to impair your driving. And then it talks about the consequences, both legal and the fact that you can hurt yourself or someone else. I think this is really important. The cost of marijuana legalization. You heard probably some ads for when we were having Amendment 3 out there, that you're going to make all this money that can be used for education and all this tax money comes in. Well, the Centennial Institute in Colorado found that for every dollar gained in revenue, Coloradans spent $4.50 to mitigate the harms of legalization. And Julie touched on this, but marijuana use is very harmful to the developing brain, associated with poor mental health outcomes. This is really, really important. This is really the biggest point we want to get across. People say alcohol is so much more dangerous than marijuana. Well, marijuana is very dangerous as far as mental health. It actually makes changes in the gray matter of the developing brain. Youth that initiate marijuana use below the age of 15 have a much greater risk of memory loss. Adolescent marijuana use is associated with increased depression, suicide, schizophrenia, and psychosis. And chronic use is associated with cognitive impairment, IQ loss, and reduced performance in school. So there's so many reasons we've got to teach our kids about the dangers of marijuana. So now I'm going to talk briefly about Delta-8 THC. And I do have a table set up in the back for you to look at these products, because you really have to see them to believe it. Delta-8 THC is synthesized from hemp. They figured out a way to put acid, solvents, and heat, take CBD, and make THC out of it. It's legal because of a loophole in the Farm Bill, sold in gas stations, convenience stores, smoke shops. there is not nearly enough regulatory oversight. These products are almost exactly like marijuana. It's THC, hemp THC, marijuana THC, very, very similar. And there's different forms. It's not just Delta 8. There's Delta 6, Delta 10, Delta 11. And then some of them are actually stronger than marijuana. THCP is found to be 33 times as strong as Delta 9 THC. What do they look like? Well, look at this. Bright colors, fruit flavors, very attractive to children. I went to a couple of stores near my house when I found out about this. This is what I found: Tittles, Nerds Rope, Skittles, and Flying Monkey. The FDA has a serious warning out there. You can look on their website, but they are just sending out letters and not really doing anything about the dangers. And this was the story that led me to my mission to try to change policy on this. A child was visiting from Ohio. He went to a smoothie shop with his parents, got a cake pop. It turned out that they gave him the wrong cake pop and it had THC in it. The child ended up in the emergency room. And I thought, this has to be illegal. But at the time, this is in 2022, the law did not have an age limit on these products. So fortunately, that's, like I said, we all started working together, going to legislators. They now have at least age 21 on these products, but there's so much more that needs to be done. And the Department of Agriculture just did a operation, and they called it Operation Safe Summer. And they went out to shops in this area, around all over the state, and found thousands of products that are child friendly. So we need to be the eyes on the ground. Go into these shops, and if you see things that are marketed towards children, please report it to the Department of Agriculture. Thank you.
A couple times I couldn't believe the facts she was sharing with us. If you have any questions again for Ellen, make sure to write them down now so you can have a chance to ask her at the end of this. And I believe someone is monitoring the questions online as well for later. So if you are joining us virtually, just leave your questions in the chat. Now, before we continue, we do want to have a special conversation with Ellen and Julie. And I want to kick it off by asking a question. And I would like both of you to, share your insight. What is the difference between medical and recreational marijuana?
I'll start with that. In Colorado, nothing. You can get a medical marijuana card if you're over the age of 18. Your parents don't have to know. HIPAA protects that. We found a huge loophole several years ago with high school kids getting cannabis and selling it in the high schools using their medical marijuana card or their red cards, almost like a rite of passage. But the only difference in Colorado is they're very similar products. You can buy more marijuana in the medical market. It's cheaper because there's no taxation, or it's a different taxation structure. And it's definitely problematic. And just so you know, I don't call it recreational because I live in Colorado. I like to climb mountains. I like to play tennis. I like to read books. I call it adult use because recreational is not using marijuana.
I agree with everything Julie said. We do not have adult use because I don't like them driving this narrative. They want to call it recreational. I think adult use, I could think of a lot worse things to say, to be honest, but when you think of recreation, you're not doing drugs is not a recreation. Somehow they've changed the narrative around that, right? But like Julie said, there is a difference between recreational. We're going to just call it that because that's what they call it according to law. Recreational and medical. The price, okay? It's the same drug. So it was interesting in Florida, if we would have legalized recreational marijuana, they were going to let the medical marijuana dispensaries start selling it. Why? Because it's the same drug. They were going to have some over here in medical where you get your card and it's cheaper. And you know why it's cheaper? It's not taxed. Whereas recreational, many times there'll be 10%, 20%, 25% tax on it. And I think if you're going to have any of it legalized, it should be highly taxed to help pay for the harms it's causing. But that's really the main difference. It's the same drug. It's not, there may be a little bit different rules about them, but it's not something special. Like you're not going into a pharmacy and getting a bottle of pills, right? So I showed you what some of the products look like. So the main thing is it expands when you have recreational. There's more people and more children that will start using, and you'll have more harms. So that's the difference, and that's why I would like to, Florida should stand strong and try to keep recreational out of here.
And I just want to say anecdotally, I've worked with a woman. She was in People magazine several years ago, and she lives here in Florida, and she had educated her children on what what medical marijuana looked like. It was opaque packaging, black and white, and somebody from California had come into her house and brought Hawaiian Tropic Red gummies. The kid ate them, got very sick, started having seizures, had to be taken to the hospital. So she said something that she said Clorox should not bleach, should not be marketed in Capri Sun packages. And that resonated with me. So medicine should be medicine. And I think the definition is everyone thinks it's approved by the FDA. It's not. There's no dosing. Some of the doctors are in the back of some of these dispensaries. So it's really just a false narrative, and it's a platform to elevate to the next level.
And what other medicine is voted by legislators or by people for an amendment? That, the FDA is supposed to approve medicines. I know we all know that, but it's just pretty outrageous when you think you can vote that if something's a medicine or not. And really what it's about is it's a huge industry. It's all about money. It's all about making a lot of money off an addictive substance. Big tobacco, big marijuana.
Was anyone else surprised by that answer? So in conclusion, there is no difference. Wow. Okay. Very insightful. Ellen, Julie, thank you so much. We continue our presentations now with Dr. Wendy Stefan. Dr. Wendy Stefan is the educator and epidemiologist for the Florida Poison Information Center in Miami. For the last 17 years, Wendy has promoted the use of poison control and worked to prevent poisoning of all kinds, including from medication, household chemicals, and environmental hazards. Wendy completed her PhD in epidemiology and her master's of public health degree at the University of Miami, and currently serves on the board of directors of America's Poison Centers. Dr. Stefan, the floor is all yours.
Great. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. This is great, and it's an important issue because we are seeing calls at the poison control centers for acute exposure to different products derived from marijuana. So we're going to talk a little bit about the types of calls we receive. First of all, just starting out to say a lot of people are really shocked that anyone would call the poison control. They think of products, marijuana-related products as being really benign and positive and health-giving. We have many people in the community who are taking them for health purposes, but the fact is we do get calls about people who are experiencing acute, unpleasant, unwanted, or unexpected events or symptoms. And so this is some information about the types of calls we see. So all the data I'm going to be citing today represent contacts with the Poison Helpline. You can see it here. That is a national 1-800-222-1222 free confidential number that people can reach if they are having any type of poisoning. And so you are speaking to a medical professional. So that might be a doctor, nurse, or pharmacist who can assess a person's experience right away and tell them basically what they need to do. So that's where all the data is coming in from. You can see the logo there on the right, and that is the national logo. Okay. So a few little caveats about our data. So, people are saying, but lots of people use marijuana and don't have bad experiences. So yes, right. We only hear about people who are not having great experiences, right? So we're not trying to say that, our data represents everybody's experience. What we do is these are people who have had a not so great experience and they're calling for assistance. And so it's an important perspective as part of this conversation. And again, these are acute poisonings. Not necessarily, we don't have data on long-term effects, behavioral health effects, or addiction. So these are simply people experiencing toxicity. So to be clear, our data tends to oversample for children because people tend to call about children getting into things. So we recognize that that is also something special about our data. We can really pick up these trends in kids. There's also no reason that people have to call us, right? So we recognize that this is actually probably an undercount of cases that are actually happening. And also sometimes people hesitate to call for things that are illegal. And so that also mean these data are a bit like an undercount. All right. So we've already covered, how cannabinoids may affect the brain, and that there are hundreds of different chemicals and receptors in our nervous system that respond to these chemicals. We mentioned, delta 9, which is the THC that we're most familiar with having psychoactive effects. But again, in our data, we don't make strong distinctions between delta 8 THC, THCO, THCP, and CBD. We categorize them, but in what I'm sharing today, I'm not splitting those out right now. Okay, so what we're interested in is when does cannabis derivatives, when do they become actually toxic? So these are calls we're getting because people are experiencing acute, unpleasant, and potentially dangerous effects. And this tends to be at high doses. So you saw about the concentration growing over time. So back when I was a teenager and there were the kids in the parking lot at the high school who were getting high, right? They were smoking a natural plant-based product that had THC concentrations of about 6%. The average THC concentration now of the actual plant, that is smoked is now between 15 and 30%. So even the plant is a completely different experience just because of the potency of these products. So we tend to get these calls from people who are new to cannabis, people who have not used the product before. Maybe, that would be, of course, small children who are not supposed to be using it really at all, getting into an adult's medicine. But we also get calls from teens who are trying it for the first time. And I would like to point out older adults, right? In Florida, these products are being marketed for a huge array of health problems, including insomnia, pain, anxiety that are common in older adults. And there is, again, that rosy glow and that marketing campaign around these products. And so we get these calls that people are really shocked at how potent the product is and the symptoms that they're experiencing. Okay, so this is 10 years of data, calls to poison centers in Florida back from 2015 through this year. And the first category, I know the numbers are small, but you see it's about 1,200 cases. And so the most common call we get about cannabis products is going to be the plant material. So again, I think we are focusing today on oils and butters, etc. But I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that the most common exposure is to a plant type material and smoked. And so we do get calls about people who are not enjoying that experience and are frightened. They're experiencing paranoia, agitation, and some other symptoms that they really weren't expecting. The second would be the edible formulations, right? And how do we get cannabis into a gummy or these candies or whatever? Well, they're using the oils, right? That oils, those concentrates, and so they're going into these edibles with pretty attractive colorations and packaging. Even if it's not the stuff that's sold legally, that is plain, that's still finding their way into our homes in the more colorful and attractive formats. So quite a bit fewer calls are about the concentrated extracts, butters, shatters, oils, resins, but we are getting those calls followed by vapes and by different tablets or. So in terms of age of the edible calls, you can see that the bulk of the calls that we receive at the Poison Center are about children, although they're very small children. So that's about a third of our cases in the 0 to 5, and another almost 40% in the 6 to 19 age category. And then again, we do get calls about adults who have used an edible and are not enjoying it one bit. And so I think that's an important point. It's not only small children that can get sick from these products because they are really strong. The concentrated extracts, now these are those oils and butters that we're talking about today. We do see more adults than children affected from these products because they do tend to be more sophisticated users because you have to use these with a heating device that heats that oil so that it can be inhaled. And so we do see sort of more toward the balance of the adults with our concentrated extracts. Okay, so symptoms. At low doses, which is, we would say, under 1 milligram per kilogram of weight, you see kind of the classic stoned affect, right? Somebody who is maybe laughing, maybe having munchies, etc., maybe more relaxed, etc. But now with the higher concentration products, it is much more common to see doses over 4 milligrams per kilogram of weight And then you're looking at more neurological involvement, confusion, dizziness, agitation, and some other systemic effects. Okay. So with the concentrated extracts, there's a lot here, a lot of data, but sort of the biggest chunk we see is rapid heart rate, and agitation, vomiting, and then we have some central nervous system depression, both mild and moderate. So it's really interesting because initially we'll see sort of the sedation effect, but as the dose goes up, we start to see agitation and then hallucinations and some other effects. So, this is not really, does not sound like a good time to me. So our callers are experiencing, symptoms that they describe as really unpleasant and scary. Small children really, without a doubt, are at the highest risk of what we would consider a serious poisoning. This is a case from Palm Beach. A 2-year-old and a 3-year-old child were given a chocolate bar by a 7-year-old who, quote, received it as a gift. So this is coming, somebody, didn't understand that it was a marijuana-containing product, gave it to a child. The child parsed it out to other children. The 2 small children became irritable and then unresponsive. So their heart rate went way, way down. They experienced hypothermia, so they had chills and major CNS depression. These children had to be put in what's called a bear hugger to maintain their body temperature. So it was a really serious case, and they were treated in the intensive care unit. So families are really, really shocked that this is even possible. And so we want people to understand that at the high doses from eating, a half a chocolate bar with 500 milligrams, they are going to get really sick. This is a second case from Broward County. So a child brought into the ED after eating bear gummies, consuming about 800 milligrams of THC. This child would only rouse to painful stimuli, and their blood gases were all off, and spent 2 days in the pediatric intensive care unit. So, access is clearly not limited. This is coming from, maybe an older sibling's stash, or a guest to the home, or a parent or grandparents' medications that they've brought into the home. These are images of some of the products that were specifically cited in the cases I reviewed. But you can see, even though I don't really know whether these would fall under the new rules here in Florida, saying, at what point do you say these are marketed to children, right? Adults like colorful things, adults like cute marketing, whatever. So I'm not sure how that's going to be enforced, but this just gives you an idea of some of those products out there that we're hearing about. Okay. So in general, with our concentrates, we are seeing more rapid heart rate, central nervous system depression, agitation, and vomiting in plant and concentrated exposure cases. But in terms of the concentrates, we're more likely to see things like nausea, dizziness, vertigo, and confusion, so more central nervous system issues. Okay. And the Poison Control Center is there around the country 24/7 to assist if people are experiencing any type of poisoning, including unpleasant symptoms from the consumption of products containing these cannabis derivatives. So we are there to assist right away for free, and the calls are confidential. That's really important. There's no shame, no blame. All sorts of wild things happen, but we're there to assist, and really importantly, for folks who are having those more serious symptoms, to know when they need to be treated in a hospital to protect their health. And that's it. That's my contact information. And I have that flyer. This is the flyer that we created specifically addressing medical marijuana in Florida. If people are choosing to use legally and safely in Florida, this is some guidance. And we really say, basically, you need to secure all your medication and treat medical marijuana or marijuana in your home the same way you would treat an opioid, for instance, as a substance that is potentially harmful to the wrong user. That's my information, and thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Dr. Stefan, thank you so much. Very insightful presentation, especially those 2 cases that she shared with us this evening. Well, last but not least, we have Captain Juan Velez. So Captain Juan Velez has dedicated his life to public service as a firefighter paramedic. He is currently employed by the city of Lauderhill, where he began his second fire rescue career back in 2006. With over 25 years of experience in the field, he has been exposed to many different disciplines, including serving as a team leader for SWAT medic program, rescue diver, and flight medic for domestic and international EVEX. In October of 2023, Captain Velez came out of the 911 front line and was tasked to initiate the Lauderhill Community Paramedic Division. Now, the division focuses on community outreach to address residents' social determinants of health. He is passionate about helping residents connect with local resources, ensuring that everyone in his community receives the support they need for a better future. His motto is, quote, educating and empowering our communities one encounter at a time. Captain Juan Velez, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, thank you. First, I want to say I'm extremely flattered to be up here with so many prepared individuals. My experience comes from firsthand. I've been in the field for 25 years, and through our program, I've been seeing a lot of the stuff that before it was just 911, I would pick somebody up and drop them off. Now I'm getting into the community, doing a lot of education with the youth. I'll start with the case that we have. A lot of our stuff is case-based, right? So we have my partner, Shaniqua Johnson, and I were the ones that were tasked to put the program together, so we do a lot of education. So one of the education pieces that she was doing, she heard a call go on the radio about overdose. She put herself on a call. Interestingly enough, she was doing Narcan training. It was in the same community. She went to the call. There was a 16-year-old that got some gummies from school, and a bunch of their friends took them. And by the time she got home, her mom found her on the floor unconscious. My partner is also a paramedic. She administered some Narcan. The kid woke up, and she asked her, like, what did you take? And that's exactly what she said. So I know that there's a lot of stuff out here that we talk about the dispensaries and legal places to sell it, but there's a lot of places out here in the community too that there's data that's being lost that you guys don't see them because it's just it doesn't get tested at the hospital, it doesn't get reported. And her being a paramedic, she identified there was pinpoint pupils, Narcan work, and she kind of woke up. So they're out here thinking they're taking legal THC. All right, so tainted marijuana. This is one of the things that we've been seeing a lot in our area in Broward County, especially in our city. We got some. I know one of the things that we do for our community is we put Narcan boxes out, and I know this is not a fentanyl discussion, but I'll tell you how I can relate it to this. So we have an area where a couple of hotspots in Broward County where our Narcan boxes are always gone, and a resident came out to me and approached me and asked me for Narcan boxes, and I asked her, "Do you know what it is?" And she knew exactly what it was. And then I said, "You know how to use it?" She goes, "Yes." I said, "That's why your box is empty, because there's a bunch of kids in this area. They're smoking wet. And smoking wet is when you put something on your marijuana, or you buy the marijuana already tainted with something else, or you buy fake marijuana that is tainted with fentanyl or xylazine or whatever it might be, even methamphetamines." We have some of the let me see. As far as the effects, right? One of the ones that I've seen a lot in the field in the 25 years is malignant hypothermia. These people getting some drugs, and some of these drugs just make them feel like they're burning up, and you see them naked running down the street. And the only cure for that for us is hold them down, give them some Valium, reverse it, or ketamine, and take them to the hospital. That's one of the most extreme side effects that I see out there. And of course, you also have, they think they're smoking marijuana and they're smoking the fentanyl, right? I used to have drug overdose in a 16-year-old, and the worst consequences are even death. So, this is mine. All right. So we have I don't think this is my slide, is it? No. Sorry, I'm not a very master presenter, but we'll go by the experience. All right, some of the possible side effects. We talked about malignant hypothermia, right? But there's so many more things. There's also the aggressiveness, panic attacks, paranoia. One of the things that I've noticed in the 911 field is that I've noticed more and more calls from 911 and people saying we smoke marijuana, we ate a gummy, and we're vaping, and they're calling for paranoia. I hadn't seen that in a long time, and then since I got into this position that I'm in now, I'm seeing it more and more. We're dealing with a lot of kids out here where our program goes out into the community, and we do everything from maternal health to fall prevention and everything that falls in between that. And one of the things we concentrate a lot is our youth and education. So we have a referral system from the hospitals and our crews, and we go out and visit these residents. And there's just so many out there that they're just complaining of anxiety, panic attacks, and it's all related. I can't say it's all related to it, but when you ask their history of where it began, don't bring it right back to where, yeah, I started, I started smoking marijuana, and now I smoke it to calm my nerves down. So they're self-medicating out there. We do a lot of community outreach. I'm a part of a committee with OFR. So our goal was to go out there and get as many community resources as we could to help our community. And we're kind of like a little, we fill a small little gap that when we go into somebody's home, we have in somebody's home, we had that trust that they give us, just that they have in us just because of our careers. So I'm able to sit in somebody's house and just talk about anything that a lot of people won't be able to talk about because they are scared of the DCF, the law enforcement. Like the doctor said that as far as they're not going to the hospital because they're in fear of law enforcement. But we're able to go and sit in and talk to them. One of the career source community centers, one of the communities that we use, we collect the vapes and spend cartridges from the residents, and we get them tested. Because there's a lot of stuff out here that there's not being tested at the hospitals, that's being missed. Here's some of the other resources that we use out in the community. Actually, let me back up a little bit to that one slide before. When we talk about our youth and the anxiety and the panic attacks that they're having, it is very, very real out here. A lot of parents don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to expose their kids to it because they don't want their family members to know or their neighbors to know. And a lot of these kids are developing some severe symptoms. There's multiple youth that I work with that they're literally just self-medicating for the panic and anxiety. And then when the mothers or the parents try to get involved, they get upset and they go and get some more out in the field. So here's some of the other resources that we utilize. We use South Florida Wellness Network. We work very closely to them. They have a youth peer specialist team that can identify some of the kids and put them through group events and mental health and therapy. Also, Harmony. Harmony is another one that comes out of Broward County that we utilize a lot for education for the youth and services. When we identify somebody in the community, our job is to connect them to the resources, and we develop some pretty good relationships to be able to do that. Healthy Start as well. We work very closely to them and their substance use disorder programs. Department of Health. And also Memorial Health and Broward County Gang Alternative. We took a couple classes with them. We started educating a lot of the youth out with our partners. And 211 and also Children's Council. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers. This has been so insightful tonight, learning about the legislation. Julie sharing how easy it is to buy some of these things when your own daughter was showing that package. Dr. Stefan sharing what we're seeing in poison control and those, firsthand experiences that you shared with us this evening, Captain Velez. Very eye-opening conversations that we've had tonight. Can we get one more round of applause for our speakers? I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This conversation is really more than just about data. It's about protecting our youth and really preparing our families, schools, communities with the information regarding high THC marijuana. Awareness is really just the beginning as we continue to shed light on this important issue. Tonight serves as a powerful starting point for really deeper conversations. Share what you've learned, keep the dialogue alive, and help others stay informed. This event will be available on YouTube, so please share it with your community as well. You'll also find QR codes linking to our community partners. Feel free to scan them to explore valuable resources and learn more about the support that they offer. And if you are joining us here this evening, we also have resources behind you, so please stop by on the way out. Next, we're going to open it up to a brief Q&A. So please, if you have any questions for any of our speakers and you're in-house, raise your hand and we'll bring you over a microphone so you can ask your question. So I'll open up the floor. Does anyone here have a question? First one up here. I'll walk over. Oh, right here.
Thank you. My name is Roger Morgan. I just moved from California to Florida 3 months ago, and I've been engaged in drug prevention work for about 30 years. So
there's some strong statewide programs that are being created from a legislative update. Colorado has, it's called the TEA on THC, and a lot of it is in there. It's information that anybody from any state could use, and it's all free resources. We have government relations teams in DC. I was there in April. It is definitely an uphill battle, and I think if it is regulated, we were talking about this, if it's decriminalized or legalized federally, it's going to fall. The onus is going to fall on the states, and that might be problematic from a data collection standpoint. I mean, I know Colorado has done a great job with data collection. We know how much THC or how many suicides have THC in it. California has not great data at all. So I think it does have to come from the top, but there's a lot. It's a very wealthy industry, as you know.
Julie, thank you. Does anyone else in the crowd currently have a question? Do we have any questions from online? And I'll bring over the mic so that we can all hear.
Okay, so how THC and CBD is delivered from recreational to medical, such as edibles, joints, liquid, lotion, pills, and syringe. Is it true that THC in medical marijuana by prescription is in pill form?
I'll answer that. No. There may be pills available, but there's each year in Florida, there's a research done on the most common types used, and the most common type of medical marijuana used is smoked. But it goes through each one and tells the amount that's sold and also how many doctors. It's like a very small percentage of doctors are recommending marijuana for 70% of the patients. And that's pretty common in other states too. But the idea that it's a pill, I think a lot of people that voted for medical thought it was like a medication that a pharmacist would give them. But you saw some of the pictures that I had, and that was all medical marijuana.
It could be becoming, but no one wants it to become.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from online, from any of our viewers online? One more chance for anyone sitting in the crowd. I mean, I'm happy to ask a question. As a reporter, I'm trained to do this. I had a couple questions. I wanted to go back to the tainted marijuana. Can you explain a little bit more what that is and what you're seeing? Is it something that people are buying? Is it different than the medical marijuana? Can you explain what the tainted marijuana was?
Yeah, so I think it pretty much comes down to being laced, right? Like back in the day when people used to lace something to get a little different effect from it, and they're just mixing it. And when I mentioned the chemicals like xylazine and other chemicals, I don't know exactly if that is exactly what's in them because we're not testing, right? I just know that the Narcan that is in our community is working with people that smoke marijuana. So whatever they're putting in there, it's undetermined right now because they're not dying. A lot of times the toxicologist done once it's too late for somebody, right? They go to the ER, they come to the ER unresponsive. Sometimes they do a drug screen, sometimes they don't. Some hospitals test 6 at panel 6, some do 13, and I mean all the chemicals that we have out here aren't even tested for. So they just pretty much lace it with stuff. There's some cases where people thought they were doing cocaine and they died from fentanyl overdose, and there's a lot of stuff out there in the community that we're missing the data. So.
But the Narcan is working.
Yeah, there's the fact that it worked with a 16-year-old, right? And yeah, I mean we see it out here in that particular community. Because I kept coming by and my box was my Narcan dispenser was empty, and she approached me because they're putting stuff in the marijuana and they're all ODing all over the place. So yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I've done a lot of reporting that Narcan is growing it's expanding here in Palm Beach County. Yeah. A lot of first responders are now carrying it.
We actually, just on the Narcan thing, we actually put the Narcan boxes out with another one of our partners, South Florida Opioid Alliance, and we actually geotagged them by 911. So if we have an overdose in that area, a 911 operator can identify and say, hey, go to this building. All our Narcan boxes are outside, and they give them put instructions. We put instructions in there so it can educate them to administrate.
Thank you so much, Captain Velez. So we have another question from the crowd.
What advice would you give the parents? Because their understanding of marijuana is different from when they were a youth versus dealing and upbringing their kids.
I think it depends on the community, right? Some communities, the parents can try to educate their kids, but we know how our kids are, right? I try to scare the kids by talking about the percentages. I bring the videos and the alligator skin and all that stuff, and try to scare them because they just don't see it. They're not aware of it. And again, their brains haven't fully developed, and now they're ingesting all kinds of other chemicals that are making them even more self-aware of what's out there. They're not, what is it? Common sense develops at 25 or something like that. So mine developed at 35. So.
Any other questions from the crowd? Oh, we have a virtual question.
I'm sorry. To answer your question, there's a lot of resources out there that you can actually bring your kids to. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Just public education is a lot of information out there.
I would also jump in on that same question in terms of parents, because I know parents really can be very discouraged, right? It feels really daunting to see all these products, and you can really feel helpless. But I think what you mentioned earlier about saying what your expectations are is very powerful, both for alcohol and for underage drinking and for drug use. That parents should not surrender, basically oh, what am I going to do? Oh well, to say, I expect you are not going to drink underage. That is my expectation. Not allow it in your home. A lot of people think they're protecting their children by having it in the home, that somehow that's safer. There is no evidence that that type of, keeping it close to home, but then it's somehow safer. What you've done is basically said you expect for your student to use the products. My advice would be, a lot of students, when we ask them, why did you start using marijuana? They very frequently talk about managing their own anxiety, managing depression, managing, trying to manage a learning disability or something, that they are struggling in school and other kids aren't. And basically they're trying to get help, right? So for a parent, if, being very careful and mindful about what your kid is going through and having good communication. And if they are starting to struggle, get them appropriate help. Get ahead of it, get them help, and because it may take not the first therapist or the first medication or whatever, it is a process that you want to engage in with your student. Don't leave them to their own devices, because marijuana is one of the products that is very frequently cited as, oh, I started because I was having this problem, or I was under a lot of stress, or I didn't have a way to cope, and it helped me in the short term, right? So let's address the needs of the kids and give them better options. Because I do think there are limits to trying to scare the kids, because again, the majority of cannabis users are not experiencing acute toxicity. If they get a small enough dose or whatever, maybe it seems okay at first, and that's really the concern we have, long term.
Would any of our other speakers like to weigh in on that question?
I think that was a great answer, because parents sometimes are, because of the way social media is and devices, the children tend to be on their own, and they may not be sharing enough with their parent, and then maybe they're afraid to, and they will start self-medicating. I think that's very common. So my advice to parents is talk to your kids. Make sure you keep up that communication, know what's going on with them. When they tell you about a problem, try to listen, and then offer them ways to deal with it, how to deal with stress and anxiety and whatever else is a problem in their life without using drugs. But I think part of it is just that we're kind of in separate universes. The kids are in one, in their own little social world, gaming and all that, and the parents are busy at work. And then here's this child, especially after the pandemic, I think we're seeing huge problems with mental illness and stress that are still kind of left over from that. And we need to be very cognizant of it, and just communication needs to be key.
I will jump on that. We have a false messages narrative on the table and on our website, but it's all the things that kids think it's going to help. It's going to help with my anxiety. Well, no, it's not. It might help for a couple weeks. works, but then it's going to push you further and you're going to need more. It helps me sleep. There's multiple studies that go against that. So I think kids do respond to science, and I think kids, especially in this generation, really care about their mental health. So if you can say this can impact your anxiety, your mental health, your suicidality, those things they do listen to. But it's it's not one. I mean, parents are like, it's one conversation. No, it's probably like 5,000 over the course of, maybe 2 weeks. But it's a constant education and being open. I mean, it's very humbling, as we all know, to be parents.
Before we move on from this conversation really quickly, just because, I'm sure a lot of people watching and joining us this evening are learning about this. And as the experts, is there a place that parents can go to? Because it seems like, we learned a lot about the different types of things that they can get educated on, in the event that they hear their children maybe say something, now I know what they're talking about.
Well, there's SAMHSA, which is a substance abuse mental health organization, which is part of the Health and Human Services. Yeah. They have something called Talk, They Hear You. It's a great program. A lot of states, I know the coalition here has a great website, One Chance to Grow Up, SAM, Every Brain Matters. There's multiple resources that you can find with the information. And again, don't, just educate.
I would also say we do get calls about with questions at the Poison Control Center. So we don't just respond to emergencies. People can also call with questions. And so we have had situations, say a parent says, hey, I found this in my kid's backpack. It says THCP on it. What does that mean? Well, we can tell them, we ask, okay, read us the name of the product. Okay, this is what it is. This is the concern. So that is a tailored, immediate response with a person, which is pretty nice. So we are there for that. And again, that's the poison control or the poison helpline.
Very insightful. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I was going to say that as far as schools, possibly could talk to guidance counselor or someone within the school system, maybe be able to help you, school nurse. And I know when I had trouble with my daughter, I have a daughter in recovery, and it started in high school. Sometimes you call 211. I mean, there's people there that you can talk to when there's very specific things happening. If your child is experiencing like paranoia, their eyes are dilated, that type of thing, that's one other place to stop. And the Poison Center is a great resource too. A lot of people aren't aware of that. But I think it would be great if we came up with a page for parents to give them all the resources, because the world has changed so much in the last even 10 years. The kind of substances that were around 10 years ago, it's completely different now. So it's hard, like our kids are being exposed to things that we have no idea about. So there's a huge learning curve here, and any way we can help parents, we need to do it.
That was very, very insightful information. I do want to get to our virtual viewers. There was a question that was put forward?
Yes. So if the deltas and all are so dangerous and possibly toxic, then why are they even permitted to be sold openly?
Money.
Yeah, it was a loophole in a bill that was passed in 2018 that legalized hemp. And I'm sure that there was chemists out there that already knew what was going to happen. Once that was legal, these products were available within a year. And they knew that it was coming in under the radar. They were in the gas stations. And if you remember, I think about, because I'm older than some of you, K2 and Spice. That was probably 12 years ago. That was sold in convenience stores. That was Scooby Snacks. It was sold under false pretenses. It was making kids go to the hospital, to mental institutions. So this is just K2 Spice 2.0. But the big difference, as Julie said, it's money, and there's an industry now. K2 and Spice didn't have an industry behind it. It was kind of made these things in a warehouse and selling them in these gas stations. There's a hemp industry. It's not about ropes, and it's not about purses, and it's not about building materials. It is about intoxicating THC products that is making them, that's their number one top seller. They have lobbyists in Tallahassee, and they're the ones showing up to the legislators' offices on a regular basis. So we need, as we're parents, teachers, Anybody who works with kids and the children themselves need to go to Tallahassee, tell them how dangerous these drugs are. And another thing to throw in there, the lobbyists and the industry is putting money towards legislators' campaigns. This is just the facts. So we have to have a huge group of grassroots to let legislators and policymakers know how dangerous these are for our own kids and share stories. I hear stories of children that are so impacted by these Delta 8 products that became psychotic, and their parents spent thousands of dollars on, they become addicted. They have to go to treatment and they become psychotic. They're now on antipsychotics from Delta 8 that they buy at a gas station. So it's educating policymakers is one thing, because we need to change the policy, but also educating parents because they have to be aware. Sorry, I get a little.
Somebody
up
once
on that.
said it's like David and Goliath. I mean, at one point there was 85 lobbyists in Colorado and one of us there. But we all know what happened to David and Goliath. Who won? So that's my rah-rah.
Can I add something to that? We talk a lot about the deltas and everything that is being produced by the industry, right? There's a lot of stuff out here that is not produced through the process. So there's a lot of stuff out there that some maybe more task force needs to develop to go out there for those little stores or selling stuff that is not regulated, right? And also with the education, we concentrate on educating the youth all the time, right? And we're not educating their parents. Maybe educating them in like the strengths of marijuana. When I talk to some of those parents that I'm dealing with, and I start mentioning what, like you said, 6% and vaping up to 100%, they can't even believe it. They don't even understand it. They have no idea that that's what's going on, and the different chemicals inside those vapes, those fake vapes. So educating the adults.
So we have another question from the crowd.
It isn't a question, it's really a statement, because I think that you're a step above where we need to be to begin with to help children and mostly their parents, because this all goes back to parents. People have been smoking marijuana. Grandparents are the originators, and they've been smoking it for a long time, and they're still here, and they're not dead or anything like that. However, we do not want to address mental health. Now, the reason why people self-medicate is because they have something going on mentally, not that they're insane, not that they're crazy, as we would like to put into quotes, but is that there's something happened to them and they were not able to articulate it to their parents, or they may have told it to a friend, but that's where it dies. However, our society will not incorporate mental health visits on an annual basis like we're supposed to have a physical examination for our physical bodies every year. If you're going to go into a sport, you have to have a physical exam, but you don't have to have a mental exam. But we don't want to pay for that through the insurance. And certainly now that they're going to be cutting health benefits, people are going to be self-medicating even more. So I would suggest that when you're lobbying for these things to perhaps not be publicized or sold, that you lobby mostly for our children's mental health, and that they have mental health evaluations annually, because they'll go in and talk to a therapist, doesn't have to be a psychologist, and certainly not a psychiatrist, but a mental health professional that can hear what they're saying and what pain they have had through the year. It could have been something their mother said, their father said, their friend said. People are always making fun of people, and so some of that is why they self-medicate. So that's the bottom line.
I just want to say I went to the high-intensity drug trafficking conference. Again, high-intensity drug trafficking conference 2 weeks ago. The entire conference was about mental health. So I looked at one guy, I was like, I can't believe we're talking about this. This is a government agency. So the you matter science and how you can overcome adverse child effects. So I 1000% agree with you. But that was so I found that very encouraging that that is the whole conference. They didn't even talk about what drugs were going on. It was all about the mattering of children's science.
So I feel like we only have a few more minutes for questions. So let's get one more virtual question in.
Okay, so what are the health effects of smoking and vaping cannabis?
Do one of our experts want to weigh in?
So we touched on some of them. So this is all about dose, right? And so I think that the products that are available now are just a lot stronger. And so tetrahydrocannabinol at lower doses, produces some of the effects I was looking at in preparation for today. And one of the symptoms was actually laughing, which I thought was so funny. I'd never seen that before. That was actually listed. So at a very low dose, you will see that type of little bit of a euphoric effect. Hyperphagia, which is the medical term for munchies, which I thought was also funny. I've never seen that. But that's at a very low level dose, right? And so for people who start at a very low dose, they may experience these side effects, and these are, relatively benign. But the industry has grown, right? And we've talked about that. And so the products that are now on the market are much more potent, whether it is smoked or whether it's taken in this edible form. And I think the smoked effects happen a lot faster. So you see those in about 15 minutes. So the edibles are actually quite a bit more dangerous because they take a lot longer to show up, that people don't feel anything right away. And so a really common scenario we hear about at poison control is that somebody took an edible, they were expecting to feel something, didn't feel anything, and then took more. So then about an hour later, the effect of the edible kicks in, and now they're way over the dose they thought they were even taking, or the recommended dose on the package. And so again, agitation, confusion, nausea, dizziness are some of the things we may see. And then in the small children who are getting these massive doses because they're so tiny, and they are likely to eat a whole handful of gummies or a whole package of gummies or the whole nerd's rope, they tend to see the most extreme symptoms, including central nervous system depression, which means difficulty breathing, and unconsciousness. And so those are the real big ones, the ones we worry about in terms of poisoning. I hope that answers the question.
I just wanted to weigh in a little bit. So smoking versus vaping, they both have an effect on the lungs. And it wasn't that long ago that we had E-Valley, which was a disease of the lungs caused by vaping. And they found the main product causing it was THC vapes. So both can have effects on the lungs. And some really interesting research just came out in the last couple of weeks that edibles and smoked marijuana, those are the two types that they researched, have very increased significant risk on the heart, including stroke and heart attack. And it was, a lot of people were shocked because you think of smoking in general has an effect on the heart. We all know that. But the edibles also had an effect, even a little more than the smoked marijuana on the heart. So it's the THC. And there's many different ways to use it. And and the other thing about vaping and edibles, they're very high in THC. They're concentrated. So we're going to see a lot more side effects and harmful effects from the most concentrated products, which unfortunately, like edibles are concentrated, but the vapes and the butter and the shatter and all that's super concentrated. So you're going to see a lot of side effects.
And just so you know, 93% of the products are high potency, at least in the most established legal adult use market. So Washington, Oregon, and Colorado, 93% of the products are over 15%. So it's really hard to find the products that might just make you laugh and get hungry.
I just want to say, this is getting close to the end. I actually use the poison control a lot to educate the youth. I tell them, say, hey guys, don't wait too long before your friend is gone, because they might leave them there down too long, and now they have a hypoxic injury, a brain injury, or just death at that. And I tell them, I say, just call poison control. Don't just not do anything, because they still have that belief that just because their buddy overdoses something, that somebody's going to get in trouble. So I use your give you little stickers out. And I educate them with poison control. So that's great.
One quick thing about that is just the Good Samaritan Act, which is a law in Florida that if a person is experiencing an overdose or has severe problems from either alcohol or drugs, that the person who's making that call will not be charged. So it's important to know that do not, stay silent because you think you're going to get in trouble. You've got to get help from your friend.
Wendy, Julie, Ellen, Juan, before we let you go, I'm just going to give you a minute or two if you have any final thoughts to share with our audience, both here in person and virtually. If there's any final thoughts you want to share.
I would just say, as parents, I know a lot of parents are going to be the folks listening. Have this conversation with your child, your child's friends. Like, what are your friends talking about? What are they using? What have you heard about? In what situations? Like, have the conversation, because you might want to go to a website or whatever, but I think you'll find that your child will be actually very knowledgeable, and there's no one you want to protect more than them, right? And having that conversation with them opens the door to, I think, really powerfully protected conversations and connections.
Very good advice. Thank you.
The name of our organization is One Chance to Grow Up, and I think that sums up all of our narratives here. Like, kids have one chance, and they have potential, and THC can damage that potential and really can potentially take a life. So I agree with you. The word "and" is it's on my home office computer, and it's "and." Like, I've gone through some tough times. You can go through hard times, and you can survive. Your kids may be struggling, and your voice matters. So parents matter, you matter, grandparents matter, coaches matter. Kids want to hear from you, and they respect you. So don't throw up your hands and say they're going to do what they're going to do. So hopefully this conversation empowers you all.
Thank you.
I think, again, educating parents and anyone who takes care of a child is really important, but we shouldn't start in high school. We shouldn't start in college. We've got to start talking to these kids in elementary school. And that's what we're trying to focus on more, is especially 4th and 5th grade. We teach a tobacco citation class in Hillsborough County. There's been children from elementary school in that class, and they might get vapes from an older brother or sister, and they're selling them in elementary school. You can never, you have to be age appropriate, but start as early as possible. And I think, the more resources you can get, educate yourself. But the one thing I think to get across to both parents and children is the developing brain. You've got to get that through everyone's head. Like what Julie said, one chance to grow up. Your brain is so important. And keeping all of these toxins away from the brain can allow a child to learn as much as possible and to live their full potential and get the mental health care that they need. So the combination of keeping these poisons away from the developing brain and getting the mental health care that they need can help a child get to their full potential.
Ellen, thank you.
I think I'll take it a little farther. We got to start educating the parents, and so they can have comfortable conversations with the youth at home, so they can be prepared to identify signs and the way their kids change. And I don't think that it's just because their kid is going through puberty or something that might be the issue. But no, stay on top of it. Make sure you know their friends. Again, just know that if you think they're smoking marijuana, most likely they're not. And also educate them on the fake drugs out there, fake, because they think that they're buying it. They think it's coming from a reputable place. They don't know anybody can make a fake purse, right? You can buy a Gucci for $50 at the swap shop. So, thank you.
A very powerful way to end this evening. Can we give it up for our speakers today?
I'm probably going to get in trouble for the swap shop comment, so I was just joking.
Well, that does it for our evening. Again, you can find all of the resources. I believe that there was this QR code somewhere. There it is. That's the QR code. So if you missed any of this, you can get more information here. And of course, please drop by all of the resources on the way out. I hope you all have a safe evening. Ride home. Have a good one.